Howdy. I just want to start today, and it's been a long day for everybody here. A short night. A lot of things go into a signing day. Things that people don't ever get to know, from phone calls to the wee hours of the night and then into the morning, decisions being made. But in the short time that we've had as a coaching staff, and in particular, I think people that look at it say, well, I was hired the 10th of December. Much of that period was the dead period. We had 1 week to finalize the mid-year guys, and then the dead period stayed until really the middle of January, which basically gave us 2 weeks to sign a class. Very, very different class than what we started off with from a commitment standpoint. You know, as I look at this today, for us to sign 19 guys and be ranked in the top 15 in the country in recruiting, that's pretty impressive by this group. You know, you look at it, and we were able to retain some very, very good players that were committed. Not all of them. I think our staff had a choice, not a choice, but we had to sit down and evaluate the players that were committed from an athletic standpoint and from an academic standpoint. And I know it's been looked at as a retention of a class that was already in place. But you look at those 19 commitments, 8 of them are guys that this staff went out and actively pursued, sought, and particularly signed today. So almost half the guys were new guys that were not committed in December. So for those guys to come in and us in a couple weeks to be able to do that, that's a testament to our staff who hit the ground running. And obviously, I think some of our previous relationships really, really helped us, not only previous relationships with a lot of these players, but coaches in the area and in some other areas, but particularly in the state of Texas, Louisiana, St. Louis, really helped us, but also our ability to really identify our problem areas and the things that we wanted to get done, and particularly the defensive front, secondary, and skill position. So from my standpoint, it was a very, very successful day, and you know, we're looking forward to getting on now with installation and moving on to spring football. Questions?
Here, far right.
Hey, Coach, Gabe Bach with Tex Ags. How pleased are you, and you kind of touched on it, but particularly with the defensive line? It was a big area of need. Yeah,
it's a big area of need. I think people, you know, for some people, it's you know, you're looking for defensive tackles. There's two different theories. Big guys like that are hard to get. You either go junior college or you grow your own. We've got some guys in there by size that are going to grow into some inside guys. And, you know, we're going to recruit defensive ends like that. You know, you look at our numbers here right now, and we signed 5 D linemen today. Really 4 guys that are defensive end types and 1 real true inside guy. So for us, that was an area of need, and I think we were successful. And any time that you're trying to build a championship team, you've got to be strong. You've got to have in the front, and you've got to have some depth in the front. So in a short period of time, we were able to accomplish that today, I think.
Right here, front right.
Brent Swarneman, San Antonio and Houston. Speaking of that interior guy, I guess that was Ray. He was a late ad. Could you tell us what you saw in him?
In Edmund Ray?
Yes, sir.
What everybody saw on video, 280-pound, 90-pound guy that can run. Was committed to Missouri, out of St. Louis. It gave us an opportunity to really get in and compete with him. Kind of kept it quiet and snuck him in under the radar for an official visit. Actually, he visited the first weekend back in January, and got him in and out of town. And really, I thought there was no problem. About Monday, Tuesday, his mom got a little worried about him being gone and leaving St. Louis and being away from home. I think it hit her that he was actually not going to go to Missouri. He was going to come to Texas A&M, and she started started crying and putting pressure on him, and we got that worked out in 24 hours, and he signed this morning. Excellent player, great kid, very, very tough kid, already 280, 90 pounds. Here's a guy that we get, Larry Jackson, we get him in here in June. Physically, he's able to help us just from a size standpoint right now. We'll have to see where he is in his development, but here's a guy that is certainly going to help us, if not next year, but early in his career.
Front left here, Coach.
Coach Brian Davis, Aggieland Illustrated. What's the reaction been like for you and your staff going around selling Texas A&M and Texas A&M and the SEC to these recruits?
It's been good. I think you've heard me talk about it. I think we've embraced it. We've talked with coaches, players, parents. There's a certain level of player that has really, really embraced the SEC. Texas A&M is a very, very special place, unique in a lot of different ways, not only in the state but in the country. Tremendous tradition and pageantry at football games, but a tremendous amount of pride amongst the fans and former students. So when players come on campus, I think we've always had the appeal, particularly game day. We've done a great job since I was last year and being at other schools, recruiting either for or against Texas A&M. You got them here game day, you get a chance. But now what? All right. So outside of game day, what is there for me? And now the game day experience, the combination of the university and now moving into the SEC, that game day experience is every Saturday. And for a lot of different reasons, I think there are a lot of players that really, really appreciate that and have embraced that and want to be a part of it.
Okay, at the far right, Chuck.
Chuck Carlton, Dallas Morning News. Kevin, how much of this class is strictly your recruiting philosophy, and how much did you maybe tailor that going into the Southeastern Conference? Everybody knows that brand of football, 9-6 football games, all that kind of stuff. Was there an emphasis on defense because of the SEC?
No, I think your question's one of the same. How much of it is my philosophy and how much of it is moving into the SEC? I better have a philosophy that's ready for the SEC. So, just looking at where we are, I think that, as I said, we needed to do something from a depth standpoint, moving from a 3-4 to a 4-3, just by sheer numbers in the front. As I look at where we are right now, we could have signed a couple more guys today. I wanted to hold off and not just sign guys to sign guys. We'll see where we are mid-year next year if we're going to need some junior college help or some early signees for January to fill some holes as we as a coaching staff feel better or get to know our talent level better. But certainly we needed to do something in the front, from a defensive line standpoint and on the perimeter for what we do. I don't philosophically, I just feel like that moving from a 3-4 to 4-3, it just made sense to do that, being in the SEC.
Here in the middle, then we'll go to far right.
This is Aubrey Bloom, gig'em247.com. I'm sure all of your coaches were instrumental in the recruiting process, but specifically, it seems like David Beatty was a guy who was really involved with a number of guys, especially you talk about Edmund Ray, maybe Darrell Walker, the guy that came in at midterm. And I was just wondering if you could talk about kind of his impact on some of these early guys that have come in such a short time.
David Beatty. David Beatty is a guy that I've known for a long time. Many of you may know him. He was a high school coach in the Metroplex before being at Rice as a coordinator, being at Kansas. We're very fortunate. We've got two head high school coaches on our staff that are extremely well respected, and Clarence McKinney, who was the head coach at Yates. David Beatty, who was a head coach at McKinney in North Dallas and knows all those guys. And they're not just high school, they're excellent coaches. So, you know, for us and recognition and comfort level of going out and recruiting, they've got amassed a great number of contacts, which we've been able to utilize, but obviously him being in Kansas and knowing some people in St. Louis really gave us a chance again with Emmett Ray. And we were able to close out on those things. You know, I think our staff, as I said before, you know, we weren't in a hurry to necessarily name all those guys, you know, because of the dead period. I took my time. What we were looking for, what I was looking for, was a group of guys, a staff of guys that could recruit. This might sound pretty easy, and it should be, you would think it would be every staff, but we needed 9 guys that could recruit, wanted to recruit, will recruit, evaluate, and coach. And the pool of those guys is not very, very good. There are a number of guys out there, coaches, that all they're going to do is coach. They don't want anything to do with recruiting. There's some guys out there that are really strong recruiters that, quite frankly, are average coaches. And I feel really, really, really good about the group that we've assembled. Obviously, in that short period of time, basically 2 weeks, that they were together to put together this class in that short period of time, with all the transformation from 20-some commitments to 19, and still being as strong as it is, I think they've done an excellent job in that period of time.
Far right, and then we'll go up to the back.
Suzanne Halliburton, Austin American Statesman. Kevin, of the 8 recruits that you actively pursued after the dead periods and stuff, where did those recruits' names come from? Were they on the Aggies' existing kind of recruiting database, or were they your database, or how can you talk, and specifically Thomas Johnson?
We never looked at, I don't know what was the existing database. So we brought our own database and our own evaluation. So the guys who were evaluated, the guys who were committed here, when we got here, we spoke with them about where we were, where they were with their commitment status. And that evaluation was not just athletic, it was academic. As you can see, there were a number of guys that were not in any conversation today. And you can make your own assumptions from that. And so knowing that the numbers were inflated by a number of those guys that were committed, because a number of them, as you can see, did not sign today. We had to evaluate that and figure with the new SEC rule, the Houston Nut rule that screwed it up for everybody, that we can't oversign. We can only sign 25. So the risk academically to get to that number was greater than the possible reward. So we had to evaluate there and then go out and still try to find and that's where quite frankly, having regional knowledge of players and coaches and guys that had recruited nationally as well as locally good players, knew where to find them, knew where they were, knew the possibility of them being able to come here in 2 weeks, and like I said, in that period of time, to transform this class, keep the core, basically the core of the class together, and transform it and still keep it where it is. I think is, as I said, I think our staff has done a exceptional job in a short period of time.